The first sign would not be fire in the sky, or oceans rising, or cities breaking apart. It would be quieter than that. One morning, sunlight would enter your room at a slightly wrong angle. The shadows on the wall would seem a little longer than they should be. Outside, people would still drive to work, birds would still cross the pale air, and the world would pretend, for a few more hours, that nothing had changed. But far above the rooftops, Earth would no longer be following the path it has followed for billions of years. Somehow, through an extraordinary gravitational encounter, our planet would have gained enough speed to begin escaping the sun, not falling into darkness all at once, but drifting away, mile after mile, day after day, carrying every city, forest, ocean, mountain, animal, and human being into a colder orbit that is no orbit at all. This is not something expected to happen in our real future. Earth's path around the sun is stable on human timescales, and the solar system is not a machine that casually throws planets away. Yet, physics allows us to ask what would happen if a massive passing object or some other extreme disturbance changed Earth's motion enough to send it outward. From there, the consequences followed the rules we know: less sunlight, falling temperatures, failing crops, changing oceans, stressed power grids, and a civilization forced to learn that warmth is not comfort, it is survival. So tonight, we are going to imagine that journey carefully, not as a sudden explosion and not as fantasy, but as a slow, plausible thought experiment about a familiar world becoming unfamiliar. We will follow the first announcements, the first cold seasons, the panic in supermarkets, the quiet fear inside homes, the migration toward warmer regions, and the long retreat indoors. We will watch humanity discover that the sky itself can become a threat, and that the greatest danger may arrive not with noise, but with silence. The question is not only what happens to the planet, it is what happens to us. How do families live when the sun begins to shrink? How do nations decide who receives heat, food, and power? How do children understand a world where summer becomes a memory? And if the surface finally becomes too cold, could humans survive beneath it, around reactors, tunnels, geothermal warmth, and artificial light? Before we begin, take a moment to like the video if this kind of calm scientific journey helps you relax. Subscribe for more long documentaries like this, and write in the comments where in the world you are watching from tonight. It is strangely comforting to know that many quiet rooms in many different places can share the same imagined sky. Now, dim the light, or turn it off completely. Let your breathing slow. Let the modern world move farther away, and picture Earth, silent and blue, beginning to leave the sun behind forever. Earth keeps moving, silent and blue, while the first people under the morning sky still believe they have awakened inside yesterday. Curtains open in apartments, trains breathe through tunnels, coffee steam rises in kitchens where radios speak softly about traffic, rain, and ordinary delays. The sun climbs above rooftops with the same calm authority it has carried through every remembered century, and nothing in its pale gold face suggests betrayal. Yet, beyond the reach of sight, beyond weather, beyond clouds, Earth has begun to leave the path that gave every season its meaning, carrying every human life with it tonight. The change is not felt as a lurch, because planets do not behave like wagons on a broken road. No cup trembles, no tower sways, no ocean leaps from its basin.
The body, so sensitive to footsteps behind it and thunder above it, is almost blind to orbital truth. Somewhere, however, antennas are listening, telescopes are measuring, navigation systems are comparing positions with the cold patience of machines. In quiet rooms, scientists look at numbers that should agree and do not. The first sign of exile is not a crack in the ground, but an error that refuses to disappear. At first, they suspect the instruments, because science is careful when reality seems impossible. A telescope mirror may be warm by a fraction. A clock may have drifted. A satellite may be reporting through noise. Models can be wrong, and human beings can be wrong, especially when fear wants a pattern. So the data is checked again, then again. Different observatories compare
Results. Spacecraft tracking networks are searched for confirmation. The moon becomes a marker. Mars becomes another. The sun, center of all ordinary measurements, becomes the fixed witness against which Earth is judged. And slowly, the verdict hardens forever. Earth is no longer following the curve it should follow. In this imagined catastrophe, some enormous gravitational encounter has changed our planet's motion, not by magic and not by prophecy, but by physics. Perhaps a massive passing body moved through the distant solar system and disturbed the balance with almost unimaginable force. Perhaps the encounter was brief, rare, and nearly impossible to predict. The cause would be studied for generations, if generations still had the luxury to study it. For the people alive in those first hours, the essential fact is simpler. Earth has been nudged onto a road outward. The first public reports would arrive as fragments, not certainty. A chart posted too early, a short message from someone inside an observatory, a thread of nervous speculation spreading faster than any official statement. Most people would not understand the graphs, but they would understand the sentences forming beneath them. The orbit has changed. The distance will increase. Sunlight will weaken. At first, the words would feel theatrical, almost embarrassing to repeat aloud. Earth leaving the sun sounds like something too large for morning television, too cleanly terrible to belong beside weather maps and advertisements for cars and cereal boxes. In the streets, disbelief would be the first shelter. People would laugh, because laughter gives the mind a moment to stand back from fear. Someone would say the scientists made a mistake. Someone else would say the government was hiding something. Others would turn the story into jokes before the jokes began to feel fragile. Human beings often meet the impossible with mockery, not because they are foolish, but because the impossible gives them nothing practical to do. You cannot hold a planet in place with your hands. You cannot phone the sun and ask it to wait for us. The official announcement would come with faces trained to remain calm. No one would want to speak too quickly. Panic wastes fuel, blocks roads, empties shelves, and breaks trust. The first sentences would be careful, almost dry. A confirmed orbital deviation. A continuing international investigation. No immediate threat to breathable air. No immediate change in gravity at the surface. No reason to abandon homes tonight. Each statement would be true, and each truth would hide a larger terror. The danger is not tonight. The danger is the direction, and direction, once set, can be merciless over long human timescales. For the next few days, humanity would learn a lesson that astronomy has always known. Warmth is distance. Earth is not warm because the universe is kind. It is warm because our planet moves at the right range from a star,
receiving enough light to keep oceans liquid, winds moving, forests growing, and skin alive beneath an open sky. Move Earth farther away, and the sunlight spreads thinner before it arrives. The law is simple, almost gentle in its wording, but severe in its consequences. Double the distance, and the light falls to only a quarter of its former strength. This would not freeze the planet at once. Earth contains stored heat in its oceans, its atmosphere, its soil, its cities, and even in the stone below our feet. The climate has inertia, a memory written in water and air. Oceans especially would slow the fall, releasing warmth long after the amount arriving from the sun had begun to decline. That delay would save lives. It would give governments time to plan, farmers time to harvest, engineers time to prepare, and families time to decide where to go. But delay can feel, dangerously, like safety in disguise for everyone watching. On the first evening, millions would step outside and look up. They would stand on balconies, in gardens, on beaches, beside highways, in hospital courtyards, on frozen northern roads, under tropical humidity, beneath desert skies, and in city squares where screens replayed the same animation over and over. Most would expect a visible sign, a smaller sun, a broken color, some cosmic wound. Instead, the sky would look almost normal. That normality would hurt. The gold at the horizon would still be beautiful. Clouds would still burn pink. The world would still know how to pretend nothing was
happening tonight. Inside homes, fear would become quieter. A loud disaster gives people tasks. Run, hide, lift, carry, call, put out the fire, close the door. This disaster would ask for stillness, and stillness makes imagination dangerous. Parents would lower their voices in kitchens. Couples would search government pages with the brightness turned down. Older people would remember winters from childhood and wonder if those memories could become the future. Children would sense the change without grasping it. They would ask whether school was canceled, whether the sun was sick, whether tomorrow would still come in the morning like it promised before. The next morning would come, and that would confuse people. Disaster stories often teach the mind to expect a single dividing line, a before and an after, marked by smoke, impact, sirens, or ruins. Here, the after looks almost identical to the before. Buses arrive, news anchors speak, weather presenters still point at cloud systems. Shops open, though some shelves are thinner. Emails continue. Meetings happen. Bills are due. A person can stand at a sink, washing a cup, while knowing the entire planet has entered a future no human law can cancel, and no wish could undo it now. The first practical fear would be food. Not oxygen, not gravity, not the ground beneath the feet, but food. The human body can understand an empty pantry faster than an altered orbit. A loaf of bread becomes a question about wheat fields. A bowl of rice becomes a question about monsoons, irrigation, fuel, transport, storage, and sunlight. Civilization hides these chains when everything works. It makes food seem as if it appears from shelves, wrapped and priced and waiting. But when the sun begins to leave, every hidden chain becomes visible, and every link looks suddenly fragile to everyone watching. Supermarkets would become emotional theaters. People would not only buy what they needed, they would buy what made them feel less helpless. Rice, pasta, flour, beans, oil, powdered milk, canned tomatoes,
medicine, batteries, water filters, matches, blankets, fuel canisters, portable stoves, thick socks. In normal times, these objects sit quietly in aisles, unnoticed until required. Under a fading sun, they become symbols of control. A cart full of dry goods becomes a small wall against the cosmos. A packet of seeds becomes an argument with despair, even if nobody knows where those seeds will grow when the ground freezes. The instinct behind this is older than cities. Before agriculture, before calendars, before the word planet existed, bodies learned that cold and hunger travel together. The animal mind still remembers. It knows the difference between enough and not enough. It knows the danger of winter, the importance of stored fat, dry wood, protected children, and a group that stays close. Modern life covers that memory with screens, salaries, and schedules, but it does not erase it. When the future darkens, the ancient mind wakes beneath the modern one and begins counting food, warmth, exits, and people with quiet precision now. Governments would try to slow that panic by turning fear into procedure. Rationing plans would be drafted before many people believed rationing was possible. Food exports might be restricted. Strategic grain reserves would be guarded. Fuel would be counted. Power plants would be assessed not as economic assets, but as lifelines. Emergency planners would map which regions could remain warm longest, which roads must stay open, which hospitals needed priority, which water systems would freeze first, and which populations could not survive without help. The language of the state would become colder, more direct, less decorative with every official briefing. In private, leaders would face the question no broadcast could soften. Who receives warmth first if there is not enough for everyone? Hospitals, certainly. Water systems, food storage, communications, dense shelters where one unit of energy protects many people. But every priority creates an edge, and outside that edge live human beings with names, histories, families, and doors that frost can enter. The first moral wounds of the wandering earth would not come from cruelty alone. They would come from arithmetic, from the unbearable act of turning limited heat into policy, while the cold keeps spreading across every border, slowly. Agriculture would become the first battlefield, though not always with weapons. It would be a battle against timing, temperature, logistics, and light. Farmers would listen to forecasts with a new seriousness, because a few degrees at night could decide the fate of fields. Crops bred for familiar seasons would find those seasons unreliable. Seeds might sprout into a spring that fails to warm. Blossoms might open when pollinators are absent. Rain might fall as sleet. Machinery might sit idle because fuel was diverted elsewhere. A harvest can be lost before it looks dramatic enough for the world to mourn properly. The first failed crops would change the atmosphere of politics immediately. Food is not like a luxury market that can shrink politely. It is the base layer beneath every ideology. A society can debate many things while bread is cheap, trucks arrive, and kitchens smell ordinary. When food becomes uncertain, patience thins. Rumors travel faster. Accusations multiply. Farmers blame energy shortages. Cities blame hoarding. Governments blame misinformation. Families blame themselves for not storing more. In every argument, the same silent fact sits at the center. The planet is receiving less sunlight, and no speech can negotiate with that physical truth. As weeks become months, the sun would begin to feel emotionally altered before it looks visibly transformed. People might notice the weakness of afternoon light, the way shadows stretch with a slightly unfamiliar patience, the way rooms seem to require lamps earlier than they should. Photographers would compare exposure values. Scientists would publish measurements. Most people would not follow the mathematics, but they would feel the thinning brightness in their routines. Curtains open, and the room remains dim. Plants lean toward windows with less vigor. A cold color enters mornings, not blue exactly, but something closer to distance and departure. There would be arguments over what people were seeing. The human eye adjusts. Cameras lie unless controlled. Memory edits the past. One person would swear the sun was smaller. Another would say clouds made it seem that way. A third would insist the whole thing had been exaggerated. But instruments would continue to measure the decline. The sun's apparent disk would shrink only gradually as Earth traveled outward. Yet the energy arriving from it would fall according to distance. The eye might hesitate, but crops, thermometers, batteries, and heating systems would keep a more honest record of the fading star. In cities, the change would gather in small inconveniences before becoming a new reality. Outdoor cafes would close earlier. Construction crews would work shorter shifts. Cyclists would vanish from roads that once held morning streams of wheels and lights. Parks would empty, except for those determined to remember them. Public fountains would be drained and covered. Heating bills would become political documents. Apartment windows would glow behind layers of taped plastic and heavy curtains. The city, once a place of movement and display, would slowly learn the posture of an animal curling inward against cold, with its breath guarded. The underground would become attractive long before the surface became impossible. Subways, basements, tunnels, underground malls, parking structures, service corridors, mines, and old shelters would appear in planning documents with fresh importance. Beneath the ground, temperatures change more slowly. Wind cannot steal heat as easily. Thick earth offers insulation without needing to be manufactured. At first, people would use these spaces during storms or outages. Then they would use them for storage. Then for clinics, schools, kitchens, and temporary beds. A place once associated with transit or utility would begin to look like the outline of tomorrow's home for humanity. For families, the retreat would begin room by room. The far bedroom is too cold, so it is closed. The hallway wastes heat, so a blanket is hung across it. The kitchen becomes the warmest place because people cook there. The living room becomes a dormitory. Mattresses slide across floors. Children sleep near parents again. Grandparents move in because separate heating is no longer sensible. Privacy thins, but warmth thickens. People rediscover how much heat a body gives, how comforting breath can sound in the dark, and how ancient the idea of huddling really is when winter enters walls. The emotional cost of this closeness would be complicated. Some households would become kinder as shared danger softened.
Old irritations. Others would become unbearable because fear has a way of filling any sealed room. Arguments over thermostats, food, news, migration, relatives, and money would carry more weight than before. A person could no longer slam a door and go for a long walk to cool down because outside itself was becoming the enemy. The home, once a refuge from the world, would become a tiny world under pressure with its own weather, borders, shortages, and fragile treaties between tired people. The map of safety would keep changing At first, warmer meant farther south for many people in the northern hemisphere, farther north for those deep in the southern. But latitude would not be the only measure. Coastlines might remain milder for a while because oceans release stored heat. Cities with strong grids would be safer than beautiful places without power. Regions with geothermal energy, hydroelectric capacity, nuclear plants, protected agriculture, and stable institutions would gain new importance. Maps that once showed tourist beaches, business districts, or national borders would be replaced by maps of heat, food, and access to shelter. This new map would pull people across the old one. Some migrations would be organized with trains, buses, convoys, and temporary housing. Others would be improvised by families who simply decided they could not wait for permission. Highways would carry mattresses, fuel cans, pets, elderly relatives, documents, tools, and small boxes of irreplaceable things. The movement would not look like adventure. It would look like a long, cold evacuation without a single burning city behind it. People would leave homes while those homes still stood, knowing that remaining might become impossible before the walls actually failed under the approaching winter. Borders would become painful lines. In ordinary times, they are often argued over through law, identity, history, and power. In this new world, they would also become questions of temperature. If one country can keep more people warm, does it have a duty to open its gates? If it opens them too widely, can its own shelters survive? If it closes them, what happens to those arriving from colder regions with children asleep in the backs of cars? No answer would remain clean. The cold would not respect sovereignty, but governments would still be judged by it every single day. The first winters would separate theory from experience. Reports might say the average temperature has fallen by a certain number of degrees, but averages are not what people live inside. People live inside pipes that burst at 3 in the morning. They live inside buses that fail to start. They live inside hospital waiting rooms crowded with coughing strangers. They live inside the moment when the power cuts out and every face turns toward the ceiling lights, waiting to see whether they return. Climate becomes personal when it enters the objects your hands depend on for ordinary daily survival. Power outages would become memories people carried in their bodies. A summer blackout in the old world could be inconvenient, even dangerous, but often it was temporary and warm. In the new world, a blackout would have a different meaning. Heat would begin draining from buildings. Pumps might stop. Communications might fail. Medical devices would need backups. Elevators would trap people in towers increasingly unsuited to life. In darkened apartments, families would listen for engines, sirens, footsteps, anything that suggested the grid was returning. Every outage would feel like a rehearsal for a colder future that was already approaching, quietly. Hospitals would stand at the center of this anxiety. They are places where civilization's promises become visible: light when the body fails, warmth when the blood cools, oxygen, medication, trained hands, clean water, machines that breathe and monitor and pump. In a cooling world, hospitals would need more power, not less, while supply chains became harder. Cold injuries would rise. Respiratory illnesses would spread through crowded shelters. Mental distress would become as real as frostbite. Doctors and nurses would care for bodies frightened by the planet itself, while their own families waited somewhere in the same dark for reassuring news.
Animals would become early messengers of disturbance. Dogs would notice altered routines and anxious voices. Cats would search for radiators, blankets, and warm machinery with ancient certainty. Birds
would shift migration where they could, but many species depend on timing too precise for sudden planetary change. Insects would vanish from regions that chilled quickly, taking with them pollination, food for birds, and the soft background motion of warm months. Livestock would become harder to feed and shelter. A barn is not only a building, it is a contract between hay, water, labor, weather, and time, now rewritten by cold. The disappearance of familiar sounds would wound people in ways no emergency plan could measure. Imagine a spring with fewer birds, a summer with almost no insects, an evening without frogs, a morning without the casual noise that once proved the world was alive without asking permission. Silence would spread before ice covered everything. It would gather in gardens, fields, parks, and wetlands. People would notice it while taking out trash or walking to a shelter, and suddenly the planetary crisis would become intimate. Not a diagram, not a briefing, a missing song in the air where life once answered. Still, the oceans would delay the deepest fear. Water stores heat with remarkable patience, and the seas would release warmth long after the continents began to cool. Coastal cities might experience a strange, temporary mercy, colder than before, but not as brutal as inland places. Fog could thicken, storms could change, snow might fall where rain once defined winter. Fishermen would watch patterns they inherited from parents become unreliable. Harbors might remain active for a while because humanity would need them desperately, but ice would begin appearing as a warning along edges where it had rarely belonged in living memory. The sea would also teach people scale. A lake can freeze before winter feels historic. A river can lock itself under ice during a hard season, but an ocean resists. It rolls, mixes, stores, and remembers sunlight from seasons past. When even the ocean begins to change, when fishing grounds fail, ports struggle, and sea ice expands beyond familiar maps, the mind understands that the emergency has moved beyond weather. Weather is what happens over days. Climate is the pattern beneath. This would be something still larger, the pattern beneath the pattern, slowly losing its source in the departing sun. Children would experience this world differently from adults. Adults would measure every change against memory. They would remember warm sidewalks, open windows, late sunsets, cheap fruit, crowded beaches, and walking outside without checking whether the air could injure skin. Children would collect the new rules as if they had always existed. Do not waste heat. Do not open both doors at once. Keep gloves near the bed. Stay with the group during outages. Ask before using warm water. To a child, normal is not what existed before birth. Normal is what the adults enforce with tired voices each cold morning. Schools would become places of explanation and shelter. Lessons about the solar system would lose their comfortable distance. The diagram on the wall, with planets circling the sun, would no longer be only a model. It would be the picture of a home being left behind. Teachers would explain that Earth once received a steady flow of solar energy, enough to support liquid oceans and the climate patterns human civilization grew inside. They would speak gently, because children can sense when adults are frightened by the lesson. Some would ask whether the sun was angry, others whether Earth was lost. A careful teacher might say,
Earth is not lost in the way a child can be lost in a crowd. It is still exactly where physics places it, moving according to forces and motion, not intention. But that answer would not satisfy the deeper question. Lost can mean separated from what kept you safe. Lost can mean moving into darkness with no promise of return. In that sense, even scientists might feel the word in their bones. The planet would have coordinates. It would have velocity. It would have models. And still, emotionally, Earth would be lost to its children. As public fear matured, some people would turn toward enormous solutions. The internet would fill with proposals for planetary engines, giant mirrors, asteroid tugs, controlled impacts, nuclear propulsion, artificial suns, and schemes to shepherd Earth back inward. A few would be based on real physics in the broadest sense. Most would be far beyond anything humanity could build, especially while trying to keep billions alive.
But these ideas would serve a purpose. They would give helplessness a shape. They would let people imagine action at the same scale as the disaster, even when the scale was impossible for present civilization. Engineers would be asked impossible questions on live broadcasts. Could we push Earth? Could we use rockets? Could the moon help? Could we build reflectors to gather more sunlight? Could we create enough artificial light to replace the sun? Their answers would have to balance honesty with mercy. Humanity can move spacecraft. It can alter small trajectories with great effort. It can produce heat, light, and power locally. But Earth is not a spacecraft waiting for engines. It is a world of almost unimaginable mass, and moving it deliberately would require energies beyond present civilization during an unfolding global emergency. So the focus would shrink from saving the orbit to saving lives. This is not a small ambition. It is only smaller than moving a planet. The practical questions would become urgent and human. Which crops can grow with less light? Which regions can still produce food? How can buildings be insulated fast? How can power grids be protected? How can medicine be manufactured if supply chains fracture? How can people be moved without turning migration into chaos? How can truth be spoken clearly enough to guide action, but gently enough to prevent despair from becoming another disaster inside shelters? The answer would not come from one invention. It would come from 1,000 adjustments, each too small to save the world alone, together forming the first outline of adaptation. Better insulation, emergency greenhouses, more efficient heating, protected grain reserves, expanded nuclear and geothermal planning where possible, public shelters, revised farming calendars, seed banks, water system winterization, medical stockpiles, training programs, repair crews, psychological support, communication networks designed to survive storms and outages. The new civilization would begin as paperwork and plastic sheets, as cables, blankets, maps, and lists taped to government walls while the cold gathered outside them. In some regions, there would be moments of remarkable cooperation. Neighbors would share tools and generators. Restaurants would cook remaining fresh food for shelters before it spoiled. Schools would become distribution centers. Libraries would offer warmth, charging stations, and quiet corners for children. Mechanics would repair old heaters. Volunteers would check on the elderly. Farmers would teach urban families how to store roots, dry beans, and protect soil. In a crisis that made the universe feel indifferent, human care would become a local form of heat, something passed from hand to hand,
while the sky grew colder above every roof. But there would also be cruelty, because pressure reveals fractures as well as virtues. Hoarding would occur, black markets would grow, scams would promise miracle insulation, secret shelters, false evacuation lists, fake fuel, and impossible rescue plans. Some leaders would exploit fear. Some communities would turn against outsiders. Some people would decide that survival justified anything. The wandering Earth would not create human selfishness, but it would remove many comforts that had kept selfishness hidden. Cold has a way of narrowing the circle of concern, unless people deliberately fight to keep that circle open for strangers beyond the door. The psychological world would become as important as the physical one. People can survive discomfort for a while if they believe it will end. This event would damage that belief. The horizon would not hold a deadline, only a direction. Therapists, teachers, religious leaders, doctors, parents, and friends would all confront a kind of fear that did not fit ordinary advice. Take it one day at a time would still be useful, but incomplete. The mind would need routines, shared meals, artificial mornings, stories, music, work, rest, and reasons to imagine a future worth entering, despite the coming darkness. Light itself would become medicine. In hospitals and shelters, lamps would be used not only to see, but to steady circadian rhythms and mood. The human body evolved under cycles of brightness and darkness, and those cycles help regulate sleep, hormones, attention, and emotional balance. As natural light weakened, people would depend more on artificial sunrise, scheduled illumination, and rooms designed to imitate a day
that no longer arrived with confidence. The irony would be delicate and sad. Humanity would build small indoor suns, while the real one slowly retreated into the distance behind them with each passing season. Religions and philosophies would absorb the crisis in different ways. Some would speak of punishment, others of humility, others of mystery, others of duty toward the vulnerable. Secular thinkers would describe a collision between cosmic accident and human meaning. Many people, whether religious or not, would gather for vigils at sunset. Candles would be lit, though candles could not warm the planet. Names would be read for those lost to cold, hunger, migration, or unrest. The ritual would matter because it allowed grief to become shared, and shared grief is less likely to become madness inside a frightened species. There would be strange beauty in the early decline. Frost on windows can look like forests. Snow can make a city gentle. Cold air can sharpen stars. A weaker sun, seen through ice crystals and altered clouds, might produce skies of breathtaking delicacy. People would hate the cold and still photograph it. They would mourn the world and still find it beautiful. This contradiction is deeply human. Beauty does not always reassure. Sometimes it makes loss clearer. A frozen fountain is beautiful because water once moved there, and because everyone looking at it knows movement may not return again soon. The media would gradually change its rhythm. At first, every update would feel urgent. Every graph would be breaking news. Every expert would speak to an audience leaning forward. Then, as days became months, the impossible would become scheduled. Morning orbital update, afternoon energy briefing, weekly crop assessment, shelter capacity report, migration status, public health warning. Human attention cannot remain at the edge of panic forever. Even planetary exile would become background noise,
while people cooked, argued, slept, worked, cared for children, and tried to remember what normal conversation used to feel like before every silence became loaded again. This normalization would be disturbing, but necessary. The mind survives by making patterns. It can turn alarms into routines if routines are the only way to keep moving. People would learn the new vocabulary of survival: thermal zone, energy curfew, crop failure probability, shelter priority, generator rotation, cold exposure limit, artificial daylight schedule. The words would sound strange at first, then ordinary, then almost invisible. A child born into the crisis might hear adults speak of the old climate with the same distant curiosity once reserved for extinct animals, ancient seas, and vanished empires from books and museum screens. In the colder regions, abandonment would begin before total failure. Some towns would become too expensive to heat, too difficult to supply, too exposed to storms, or too far from priority infrastructure. Leaving would not happen cleanly. A few families first, then schools closing, then clinics reducing hours, then fuel deliveries becoming uncertain, then an official recommendation, then a final convoy, perhaps, under a pale sun and a sky too clear for comfort. Empty houses would remain behind, with furniture inside, dishes in cupboards, curtains stiff at windows, and gardens buried under snow nobody planned to shovel ever again there. Those abandoned places would become warnings. Travelers might pass through them on necessary routes and see how quickly human spaces become archaeological when warmth leaves. A gas station with frozen pumps, a school notice board announcing events that never happened, a church with doors drifted shut, a playground half buried, swings moving slightly in wind too cold for children. Nothing about such scenes requires destruction. That is what makes them powerful. The buildings stand, the streets remain, the world did not explode. It simply became too cold for the promises those places were built to keep through ordinary human years. By now, the early question would have changed. People would no longer ask only whether Earth was leaving the sun. They would ask, what kind of species could leave with it? A surface species? A farming species? A city species? A species of tunnels, greenhouses, reactors, ration books, and artificial dawns? The transformation would not happen instantly, but its outline would be visible. Humanity would begin turning from the open sky toward controlled interiors,
From weather toward machinery, from seasonal trust toward managed survival. The old world would not vanish in one night. It would be negotiated away by degrees, and yet there would still be mornings when the sun seemed almost generous. A weak gold band across a frozen wall, a glittering street after snowfall, a brief warmth through glass that made everyone in a room turn their faces toward it without speaking. Those moments would be treasured and distrusted at the same time. They would remind people that the sun was not gone, not yet, but they would also remind them that receiving a gift is different from owning it. The light could touch skin for a moment, then fade behind cloud, distance, and the widening dark ahead. So the first phase of the wandering Earth would end not with a final announcement, but with a shift in behavior. People would move closer together. Cities would choose which lights to keep alive. Farms would retreat under glass. Governments would count heat as carefully as money. Families would sleep in warmer rooms and speak of summer more softly.
Above them, the sun would still rise, smaller in meaning, even before it became small to the eye. The lesson would be simple, ancient, and terrifying. When the fire moves away, every living thing must search for shelter beneath shared walls. When the fire moved farther away, shelter became the first language people trusted. The world outside still existed, but it no longer felt like home. Windows became weak places, doors became borders, hallways became wasted cold. Families pulled mattresses into kitchens, sealed rooms with blankets, and learned how quickly privacy loses meaning when warmth is limited. At first, these changes looked temporary, like precautions before a severe storm. Yet the cold did not pass over. It settled into routines, into furniture, into conversations, until ordinary houses began feeling like shelters built for a disappearing season that would never return again. People began to gather where one furnace could protect many bodies. Schools opened their gyms. Malls lost their music and became sleeping halls. Stadiums divided their fields into rows of cots, charging tables, medical corners, and ration counters. The change was not announced as a new civilization. It arrived through small signs: a sign for quiet hours, a cue for soup, a child drawing the sun as a smaller circle, an old man folding blankets where shoppers once crossed polished floors beneath bright signs and glass ceilings, waiting for heat to rise through vents before another difficult night indoors began. At first, everyone called these places temporary. Temporary is a merciful word. It lets the mind believe the old map is waiting nearby, folded safely for later. But temporary shelters acquired rules, names, storage rooms, school hours, repair teams, and little gardens under lamps. A week became a month became a season. People stopped asking when they would return home and began asking whether the east entrance was warmer than the north one. Without ceremony, emergency space turned into human habitat shaped around heat, breath, work, food, and sleep, shared by strangers learning dependence inside enclosed communal air. Every shelter developed its own weather. Some were calm, measured, almost monastic, with cleaning rotations, soft announcements, and people who moved carefully because noise made fear larger. Others carried tension like static. A cough in the night woke dozens. A crying baby traveled through the room as if the sound had walls. Arguments over sockets, blankets, medicine, or extra bread revealed how quickly abundance had once hidden the labor of kindness. Yet every morning, people rose together because survival was becoming a shared temperature that no one person could maintain alone for very long in the fading light of Earth now. Cities were judged again, not by skyline, wealth, nightlife, or speed, but by how well they held heat. Glass towers became fragile lanterns leaking warmth into the air. Suburbs became wide puzzles of roads, pipes, and isolated rooms too costly to warm. Thick old buildings, basements, subway stations, service tunnels, and dense districts near power gained new value. The city was no longer a collection of addresses. It was a thermal organism, judged by insulation, wiring, water, storage, access, and how many bodies could remain alive within its protected arteries while the surface cooled above them each passing week outside.
Power became the heartbeat of that organism. Without electricity, indoor retreat was only a pause before exposure. Current moved water. warmed air, preserved medicine, kept radios alive, drove pumps, powered grow lights, and created artificial mornings where natural light had weakened. In the old world, power had often felt like convenience, hidden inside switches and monthly bills. Now it became breath, sight, food, memory, and order. A battery was not merely a battery, it was a candle, a map, a hospital, a message, a promise that the room remained connected to the human world beyond its cold walls, tonight still. Energy sources were examined with new seriousness. Solar panels still worked, but the weakening sun made their future uncertain, especially beneath snow, storms, and long, dim seasons. Wind could help in some regions, though changing climate would make familiar patterns less reliable. Dams depended on flowing water that might freeze, shift, or decline. Fuels could burn, but transport and reserves could fail. Nuclear power looked newly precious, not as an abstract argument, but as dense, steady heat for hospitals, shelters, pumps, and farms under glass. Yet, every answer demanded skilled hands, spare parts, and institutions calm enough to endure pressure. Geothermal energy would carry a special significance because it came from Earth itself. Even as the sun retreated, heat still rose slowly from radioactive decay and ancient formation deep inside the planet. In some places, that heat could warm buildings, drive turbines, or support enclosed communities. But geology is uneven. Not every city sits above useful warmth, and drilling deep systems requires machines, materials, time, expertise, and safety. The new world would not be saved by one elegant solution. It would survive, where it survived, through uneven patches of power arranged like campfires across a darkening planetary map for humanity. This unevenness created a new geography of hope. A famous capital without reliable energy might become less useful than a small industrial town near a stable plant. A colder country with organized reserves might outlast a warmer region whose grid collapsed. Places once ignored on tourist maps could become vital because they had tunnels, mines, dams, reactors, or geothermal wells. Old prestige faded before practical warmth. Governments spread maps across tables and stopped seeing borders first. They saw cables, roads, food stores, water systems, population density, and how many people each valley or district could keep alive through winter cycles. The fear of blackout became deeper than ordinary fear of darkness. People remembered the first time a shelter lost light and ventilation together. The conversations stopped. The air seemed suddenly older. Somewhere, emergency batteries clicked in with a tiny delay that felt like an entire lifetime. In that pause, everyone understood that civilization has a sound. Fans turning, pumps humming, transformers vibrating, current passing through walls. When that sound disappears, people hear themselves as fragile animals again. They listen for machines the way ancestors listened for fire, rain, predators, and footsteps beyond the cave entrance at night in winter silence. To prevent those moments, grids would simplify. Some regions would form local microgrids, easier to protect than vast networks stretching across failing weather. Critical buildings would receive priority lines. Hospitals, water plants, food stores, communications centers, and warm shelters would stay lit while decorative brightness vanished. City centers dimmed first, then billboards, then office towers.
Then quiet residential streets where windows glowed less each month. Darkness returned to places that had forgotten real night. The stars sharpened overhead, beautiful and severe, like jewels displayed on the receipt for a civilization spending less light than before to survive longer together below. People rediscovered that illumination had been confidence. Bright streets make society feel awake everywhere at once. Storefronts, headlights, traffic signals, signs, offices, and apartment windows once formed a glowing net across the night. As rationing deepened, that net tore into islands. A hospital shone here, a shelter shone there, a power plant glowed behind fences. Between them lay dark roads and silent blocks. The human mind treated each lit place as a village around flame. Crossing from one to another felt less
like commuting and more like moving through open country under a sky slowly losing its old mercy for travelers. The oceans continued their slow surrender. At first, they protected the coasts because water stores heat with remarkable patience. Maritime air softened extremes, and some coastal cities received a temporary mercy, while inland regions froze harder. But stored warmth is not infinite. As less sunlight arrived, upper layers cooled. Ice expanded where conditions allowed. Currents could shift in complex ways, guided by temperature, salinity, winds, and dense sinking water. No single date could describe every ocean basin, but the direction was clear. The sea was beginning to give back the last warmth it had borrowed from the sun long ago. Coastal communities watched the change with a dread that felt personal. The sea had always been dangerous, but also generous, moving, breathing, feeding, and moderating life beside it. Now, harbors needed clearing as ice appeared where ice had rarely belonged. Fishing boats traveled farther for uncertain catches. Storms carried stranger patterns. Fog thickened over cold water. Markets, once loud with knives, voices, crushed ice, and silver fish, grew quieter. Each missing crate meant more than lost trade. It meant one more food chain bending under the weight of a planet drifting beyond its familiar climate into long, cold uncertainty ahead. The loss of marine food would touch many lives. Fish and shellfish are protein, work, trade, culture, memory, and identity for coastal peoples. If catches failed, pressure on land food increased exactly when land harvests weakened. Aquaculture could continue in controlled systems, but tanks require energy, feed, clean water, disease control, and trained care. Nothing remained separate. A colder sea affected diets. Diets affected health. Health affected labor. Labor affected repairs. Repairs affected power. Power affected shelter. The wandering planet revealed civilization as one woven fabric, tugged at every edge by the shrinking fire in the sky above Earth's horizon. On land, the last open harvests would feel almost sacred. Farmers walked fields knowing they were not merely gathering grain, fruit, or roots. They were closing a chapter begun when human beings first trusted seasons enough to plant and wait. Agriculture is a partnership with sunlight, soil, water, microbes, tools, animals, and patience. When the sunlight weakens, the field becomes a place of memory as much as production. Wheat, rice, corn, orchards, vineyards, and pastures all seemed to whisper that food had never been made by humanity alone, but borrowed from a star and returned through living green work daily. Protected agriculture became the urgent replacement.
Greenhouses were insulated, reinforced, heated, and connected to backup power. Hydroponic channels carried nutrient water through racks of roots. Aeroponic systems misted plants in enclosed chambers. Vertical farms stacked leaves under lamps, where warehouses had once stored clothing or electronics. Mushrooms, yeasts, algae, and microbial proteins received intense attention because they did not need ordinary fields. These systems were not miracles. They required minerals, sterile habits, technicians, pumps, sensors, and constant energy. But they offered one precious possibility: calories, partly freed from the failing open sky and its fading seasons above the shelters below. The human diet narrowed. Fresh tropical fruit became rare beyond protected growing centers. Coffee, cocoa, spices, and delicate crops turned into luxuries, substitutes, or memories, unless carefully cultivated under expensive lamps. Meat became harder to sustain at old scales because animals require feed, water, warmth, space, and care. Meals shifted toward grains from reserves, legumes, preserved vegetables, greenhouse greens, fungi, cultured foods, and whatever each settlement could maintain. Eating became less about desire and more about continuity. The daily question changed from "what do we want?" to "what can this place produce again tomorrow without risking everyone else near us?" This narrowing hurt because food carries climate inside memory. A peach is not only sugar and fiber, it can be summer heat, a market stall, sticky fingers, a grandmother cutting fruit near an open window, or a road lined with trees. The last fresh strawberry in a shelter might make someone cry because it tasted like weather that no longer belonged to them. Humans are not
Machines that convert calories into motion. They are remembering bodies. When food changes, the past enters the mouth differently, and absence becomes something the tongue can recognize before the mind finds words for grief. Rationing required trust, and trust was difficult to preserve under hunger. People accept limits when they believe rules are fair, numbers are honest, and powerful families are not secretly exempt. In some places, transparent systems built discipline. In others, corruption, favoritism, rumor, or incompetence broke cooperation. A hungry crowd is never abstract. It has children, elders, anger, fatigue, and a sharpened sense of injustice. The fight to feed people, therefore, became a fight for legitimacy. A ration line was also a question asked of society. Do we still belong to one another when there is not enough for all today? Children inherited routines that adults found heartbreaking. They learned that daylight lamps switched on at planned hours. They knew some doors were airlocks, not entrances. They understood that food trays held measured portions because the settlement depended on balance. They saw pictures of outdoor farms and asked whether plants truly grew beneath open sky. Adults said yes, then sometimes paused. Yes, there were fields where a person could walk for hours beside food growing in wind. Yes, rain once arrived without pipes. Yes, summer smelled different from winter, and everyone knew why before Earth wandered away from home into darkness slowly. Education changed without surrendering wonder. Children still learned stories, mathematics, languages, music, and art, because a society that teaches only endurance becomes spiritually thin. But science carried immediate weight. Photosynthesis was not a distant chapter. It explained forests, crops, oxygen, and why new farms needed lamps. Thermodynamics explained leaking walls and life-saving insulation. Astronomy no longer felt remote.
It became biography, how Earth had once circled a star at a life-supporting distance, and how a rare disturbance had sent the whole classroom outward. Knowledge became comfort because it gave fear shape, limits, and language the children could hold gently. The psychological effects of dimming light deepened. Human bodies evolved beneath cycles of day and night, and artificial lamps could help, but could not fully replace horizon, weather, distance, and the slow authority of dawn. Many people suffered poor sleep, low mood, anxiety, irritability, and a sense that reality had become thinner. Crowded shelters amplified every emotion. Grief became common enough to feel like weather. People grieved homes, freedom, privacy, careers, landscapes, animals, meals, and futures that had not ended dramatically, but had been quietly cancelled by distance from the sun and the cold arithmetic following after it each day. Mental care became infrastructure, like water, food, and power. Counselors, teachers, nurses, community leaders, and trained volunteers helped people build routines, settle conflicts, and make meaning inside conditions no generation had rehearsed. Shelters created artificial mornings. Lights rose slowly. Music played softly. Work teams received assignments. Children gathered for lessons. These rituals were not decorations. They told the nervous system that time still existed. In a world where natural day had weakened, society had to manufacture rhythm, because rhythm is one of the oldest shelters of the mind, and without it, fear can wander endlessly through a crowded room, alone. Privacy thinned, and relationships changed with it. Some people longed for solitude with an ache almost physical. Others, once lonely in separate apartments, found safety in shared rooms and regular voices. Families split by evacuations used fragile networks to keep speaking across distance. Weddings happened under maintenance lights. Funerals were brief because heat could not be wasted. Yet people insisted on names, silence, songs, and hands held together. Births carried a strange mixture of hope and fear. To welcome a child into a wandering world was an act of love, defiance, uncertainty, and trust in tomorrow, despite everything outside freezing. The economy changed its center of gravity. Many jobs faded, not because they had no beauty, but because survival reordered demand. Tourism, luxury retail, office routines, fashion cycles, and industries built on optional consumption shrank or reinvented themselves. Other skills became
central. Engineers, electricians, mechanics, agronomists, doctors, nurses, cooks, insulation workers, water technicians, logistics planners, teachers, sanitation crews, and people who could repair old machines. Status shifted away from display toward usefulness, though inequality did not disappear. The cold did not make humanity pure. It only revealed which labors kept everyone breathing through the next night underground when systems held together. Money remained useful where institutions held, but physical essentials gained force beyond price. Warm space, reliable power, clean water, medicine, calories, seeds, tools, spare parts, batteries, fuel, safe passage, knowledge. The invisible web of finance had to attach itself again to visible survival. A person with access to a heated room might be richer in practice than someone with numbers trapped in a frozen banking system. In stable regions, markets adapted around ration and repair. In unstable ones, barter, local authority, debt, promise, and coercion
returned uneasily among the ruins of normal commerce and ordinary trust between neighbors each day. Law followed heat. Emergency powers expanded. Building codes changed. Hoarding could become a crime. Energy waste might be punished. Travel into protected zones could require permits. Some measures saved lives, and some were abused. The balance between freedom and survival became one of the inward world's central tensions. People accepted rules they once would have rejected because cold is persuasive. Yet acceptance did not erase resentment. A society can be physically protected and emotionally strained at the same time. The walls that keep winter outside can also magnify suspicion, rumor, obedience, and fear within the warm corridors below locked doors. Public spaces lost their old meanings. Stadiums became shelter districts. Airports became storage fields and medical staging grounds. Convention halls became dormitories. Universities became research farms, clinics, and training centers. Office towers became liabilities unless they could be sealed and powered. Hotels became quarantine wards or family housing. Museums moved collections underground, not only to preserve art, but to preserve evidence that humanity once possessed spare energy for beauty, curiosity, and slow attention. Nothing built by the old world remained conceptually fixed. Each structure was questioned by the new grammar of heat, air, food, and crowding beneath winter skies outside. Archives became surprisingly vital. They stored maps, seeds, climate records, medical knowledge, engineering manuals, language, music, art, fossils, films, and testimony. In a practical sense, they helped settlements remember how to grow, build, heal, and repair. In a deeper sense, they reminded people that humanity was more than a population trying not to freeze. Children could walk past images of forests, coral reefs, deserts, and summer cities, as if visiting another planet. The archive became classroom and memorial together, preserving the Earth that had existed before exile, so the inward generations would know what had been lost above them in light. Ritual gathered around light. Ancient cultures had always honored dawn, solstice, harvest, fire, and stars because the sky was never only background. Now, new ceremonies formed. People marked the final outdoor harvest of a region. They gathered when the sun fell below a measured brightness. They saved candles from abandoned homes, soil from gardens, photographs of beaches, recordings of birds, jars of rainwater, seeds from orchards. Objects gave grief a place to rest. A small thing could carry an enormous climate when the climate itself no longer held its people in warmth beneath the open sky they remembered so well. The retreat underground began in practical stages. Basements were reinforced, subway stations were sealed and warmed, mines were surveyed, service tunnels were mapped, underground parking structures were partitioned. Natural caves were considered, where geology allowed, though caves bring risks of water, instability, airflow, and access. Military bunkers and research facilities expanded. The attraction was clear. Below ground, temperature swings are reduced, wind is absent, and thick earth offers insulation and protection. But living below is not simply living in windowless rooms. It is an entire ecology of machines, habits, rules, dependence, and controlled breath, shared carefully underground by everyone.
Inside, air became visible below ground in a new way. On the surface, air once felt free, although it had always belonged to a delicate planetary system. Underground, air must be moved, filtered, warmed, cooled, measured, and shared. Carbon dioxide cannot be allowed to build. Smoke, dust, mold, infection, and chemical fumes become serious concerns. Ventilation is not background convenience. It is breathing made mechanical. The sound of fans becomes as reassuring as rainfall once was, because silence in a tunnel might mean something essential has stopped caring for the sleeping crowd within its walls during the long night below Earth. Water was equally central. Pipes can freeze. Pumps need power. Aquifers must be protected. Waste must be treated. In dense underground habitats, sanitation is survival. Human history has shown again and again that cities are not safe because people gather. They are safe when water, waste, food, and disease are managed well enough for gathering not to become a trap. A beautiful, heated refuge without sanitation would fail. A deep bunker without water would be a lit tomb. Every settlement would be judged by flows, not walls, because life moves through pipes before it becomes comfort or community underground anywhere. Social structure emerged quickly in these habitats. Space was assigned, work was scheduled, noise was regulated. Children needed play areas, elders needed care nearby. Food production zones were protected from contamination. Mechanical rooms were guarded. Some corridors were public, others restricted for safety or authority. Inequality might appear vertically, with better quarters deeper inside stable thermal zones and poorer spaces near entrances or service edges. Even beneath a dying sky, human societies carried old tendencies, compressing status into square meters, privacy, temperature, access, and distance from danger. Survival changed architecture, but not every human desire inside it for comfort quietly. Yet underground life could create solidarity. Everyone knew, at least in principle, that the habitat was a shared organism. Waste was noticed. Repairs mattered. A careless mistake could affect air, power, food, or morale. People rediscovered forms of dependence hidden by modern isolation. A cook, electrician, teacher, nurse, pipe fitter, waste technician, doctor, and storyteller could all become necessary in different hours. Separate apartments and private schedules gave way to a denser belonging, more demanding, more watchful, more irritating, and sometimes more tender than the old freedom that had scattered everyone across warmed rooms alone before the wandering began outside. The surface became a place of missions. At first, people still traveled outside for repairs, transport, and movement between buildings. Later, every outing was planned. Clothing was layered carefully. Batteries were checked, radios were tested, routes were confirmed, weather was studied like an adversary. Teams stepped through streets that once held casual pedestrians, now crossing ice, snowdrifts, abandoned cars, and cables stiff with frost. Indoors, life was managed. Outdoors, the planet was no longer on your side. A simple walk had become an expedition into the remains of weather, memory, and the old breathable city above the buried lights below. Returning to former homes was among the hardest journeys. People requested permission to retrieve medicine, documents, tools, photographs, or small family objects from neighborhoods no longer safe. They entered houses frozen from within, frost-feathered mirrors, pipes split, books warped. A bed remained made. A child's drawing clung to the refrigerator. The refrigerator itself was useless, perhaps colder than it had been designed to become. These visits felt like walking through paused lives. The rooms contained no enemy, no monster, no violence, only absence so complete that grief had to speak softly there, or not at all.
before leaving again. Frozen cities slowly lost their human smell. Warm cities smell of food, exhaust, rain on pavement, laundry vents, restaurants, plants, trash, dust, animals, and millions of bodies moving through air. Cold suppressed decay and motion. Streets smelled less and sounded less. Fewer engines, fewer voices. Snow absorbed footsteps. Wind moved through signs. Buildings contracted with quiet cracks. Metal creaked. A repair vehicle hummed far away. Perhaps a power station still held one district alive. The urban world
became vast, sculptural, nearly lunar, recognizable in outline but estranged in spirit beneath the faint and shrinking sun that watched without warmth overhead. Daytime weakened in meaning as Earth traveled farther. At first, day still guided visibility, morale, and some power generation. Later, artificial schedules dominated. Settlements kept roughly 24-hour cycles because human bodies needed rhythm, and because the old rotation of Earth continued even as sunlight failed. The planet still spun, stars still rose and set, but daylight no longer commanded daily life. Lamps, clocks, bells, meal rotations, work shifts, and sleep protocols became the new sunrise. Humanity began living by organized illumination rather than by the ancient authority of dawn coming faithfully over the edge of the world outside. Nations did not vanish quickly. States are made of records, institutions, borders, laws, armies, languages, symbols, and stories, and those can persist under extraordinary pressure, but their purpose narrowed. A government was judged less by prosperity and more by allocation. Could it keep people warm? Could it feed them? Could it protect power plants, water systems, and hospitals? Could it tell the truth without producing panic? Legitimacy became less ceremonial and more thermal, edible, medical, and immediate. The flag mattered, but the functioning heater beneath it mattered more to families waiting in line for soup and medicine after sunset underground. International cooperation was necessary and difficult. The catastrophe touched everyone, but not evenly, and uneven suffering complicates solidarity. Regions with energy reserves, stable underground habitats, or remaining food production were asked to share. Regions losing habitability demanded relocation. Scientific knowledge had to move quickly. Crop trials, insulation methods, medical protocols, power management, atmosphere observations, ocean changes, habitat design, and psychological care. Rivalries did not disappear, yet every government knew the same fact. All flags flew beneath one fading star, and no border could persuade sunlight to return more generously to one nation than another for long during Earth exile outward. Militaries became logistics forces as much as defense forces. They had vehicles, command structures, engineers, medical units, communication systems, and experience moving supplies under stress. They could clear routes, build shelters, protect power plants, distribute food, and maintain order. But militarization carried danger. A society treating every shortage as a security threat might preserve infrastructure while damaging trust. Soldiers handing out blankets could reassure. Soldiers guarding warehouses could frighten. The line between protection and control was negotiated daily in queues, checkpoints, orders, and the tone of voices amplified over speakers to tired people holding ration cards in gloved hands outside. Science continued under pressure. Observatories tracked Earth's outward path with growing precision. Climate models absorbed real measurements. Engineers tested habitat materials.
Biologists studied crops, fungi, algae, microbes, and pollination under controlled light. Medical teams examined cold stress, nutrition, infection in crowded rooms, and psychological endurance. Oceanographers monitored ice and currents. Geologists mapped geothermal prospects. Survival turned research into immediate practice. Knowledge was not luxury. It was negotiation with physics after humanity lost the easy partnership with sunlight. Every useful measurement became a small tool placed against the enormous silence of space surrounding the wandering planet and its frightened passengers below. This science required humility. Earth is complex in ordinary times, and this scenario would push climate, oceans, ecosystems, and civilization beyond familiar experience. Researchers could describe broad trends confidently: declining solar energy, falling temperatures, stressed ecosystems, growing dependence on artificial heat. But local outcomes would vary. Clouds, ice, oceans, geography, atmosphere, technology, and human choices would interact in difficult ways. Honest voices would avoid false precision. Uncertainty would not mean ignorance. It would mean respect for a system larger than any model, and mercy toward people seeking certainty where none could safely be promised yet, for every region alike today. Culture adapted to the inward world.
Songs were written for low voices in shared rooms. Painters used recycled panels, soot, minerals, and leftover pigments. Old films of beaches or forests were watched with reverence or pain, depending on the viewer. Games shrank into forms that needed little space or energy. Festivals were redesigned around light budgets. Birthdays mattered more, not less, because marking time insisted that lives remained individual inside the crowd. Even humor survived carefully, offering the nervous system brief release from pressure, proving that catastrophe cannot fully govern the human need for rhythm, play, and tenderness together still. Language changed with the habitat. Above and below became emotional words. Above meant risk, memory, sky, cold, work, ruins, retrieval, and exposure. Below meant warmth, rules, air systems, closeness, food, sleep, confinement, and safety. Old phrases sounded strange. Going outside for air became ironic, where outside air could injure and inside air was carefully maintained. A window was first luxury, then liability. Sunlight became an adjective for memories, moods, and faces. She had a sunlight laugh, someone might say, meaning warmth that belonged to the lost surface world no lamp could fully restore inside anyone's heart after years below ground. Bodies learned new habits. People became attentive to layers, calories, hydration, fatigue, and early signs of cold stress. Outdoor workers trained like specialized crews. Children were taught not to touch metal without protection, not to wander, not to ignore numb fingers, not to remove face coverings, because discomfort was not the same as danger. Elders and infants needed special care because bodies at the edges of life regulate temperature less easily. Community health depended on noticing vulnerability early, before a cold room became a medical emergency behind a closed door during another long artificial night of guarded heat below Earth. Still,
Some people searched for the sun. They gathered at sealed domes, protected rooftops, insulated observatories, and surface stations when weather allowed. They did not always go for information. They went for relationship. The sun had been ancestor, clock, furnace, god, measurement, painter of mornings, maker of shadows, ripener of fruit, and companion to every human century. Watching it shrink was mourning too large to finish. People stood quietly, faces shielded, breath fogging inside masks, and looked anyway, as if attention itself could keep a thread between Earth and the fading light that had once held everything alive so gently. Beneath every policy lay a difficult question. Should humanity preserve the surface way of life as long as possible, or accept transformation early enough to survive it? Some argued for familiar streets, old schools, existing homes, and visible continuity. Others said resources spent defending the old shape of society should move into deep habitats, protected farms, hardened power, and long-term planning. Both positions contained love. One loved the world as it had been. The other loved the people who might live after that world could no longer protect them from the cold that waited beyond the last warm season. The argument became local through countless decisions. Repair this district or evacuate it. Heat scattered apartments or move families into communal halls. Keep a school above ground or rebuild it below. Spend energy on a ceremony or save it for crop lamps. Preserve a museum in place or carry its contents underground. Each choice removed part of the old world or preserved it at a price. Civilization did not change only through collapse. It was edited line by necessity, as cold pressed its blue hand against every doorway and window still exposed to sky above human memory outside. Yet life kept softness. Someone braided a child's hair beneath emergency lighting. Someone taught an old song in a corridor. Someone repaired a stranger's glove. Someone planted basil in a nutrient tray and invited others to smell it, because scent can return a person to summer faster than speech. Someone fell in love beside a humming ventilation shaft. Someone held a newborn under artificial dawn and whispered that the world was difficult, but not empty. These moments solved nothing in astronomy. They only kept people human, which was another form of survival when the sky itself felt withdrawn from them. Above the shelters, Earth moved farther from the star that it shaped.
Forests, empires, languages, oceans, migrations, and every harvest song. The surface grew less forgiving. Oceans cooled. Fields withdrew into memory or glass. Nations became networks of heat, power, food, and obligation. The open world remained vast and magnificent, but increasingly beyond ordinary reach. Humanity stood at the threshold of deeper adaptation, no longer merely surviving a severe season, but preparing for a different existence, where home might mean a lit chamber below stone, ice, machinery, and a sky few children would ever touch without permission again in life. The next stage would be quieter and stranger than the first retreat. It would not be measured by crowded supermarkets or emergency announcements, but by the slow disappearance of the surface from daily life. A generation would learn to sleep without moonlit windows, grow food without fields, study weather as history, and call tunnels streets. The sun would remain in the sky for a while, but increasingly as a distant object rather than a parent star. And as the old world receded upward, humanity would begin asking,
What could survive when even daylight became something remembered more than lived directly? In the shelters, lamps would lower toward artificial night. Ventilation would continue its careful breathing. Children would curl beneath shared blankets, while adults checked gauges, doors, seed trays, medical lists, and power reserves. Far above, ice would gather on silent streets, and the faint sun would cross a colder sky with less authority than before. The question was no longer whether humanity could endure one harsh winter. It was whether an entire species could learn to live beside artificial fire while its planet drifted onward, carrying every warm room toward the deeper night, waiting beyond the last familiar horizon ahead. The deeper night did not arrive at last like a curtain falling. It gathered by degrees, until the difference between morning and evening became less a matter of light and more a habit kept by clocks. Far above the shelters, the sun still crossed the sky, but it no longer commanded the world. It was smaller now, sharper, more distant, a bright point with a memory around it. People looked at it through glass and understood, perhaps for the first time in a bodily way, that a star can be present and still be leaving. On the surface, daylight became a thin substance. It touched ice, stone, abandoned roofs, and the upper floors of buildings no one heeded anymore. But it no longer carried the old promise of life returning. Snow did not melt as it once had. Shadows stayed hard. Streets that had been cleared became buried again. Cars froze into shapes, their tires fixed in place, their windows opaque with frost. Traffic lights hung above empty intersections, dark or blinking to no one. The world had not ended in flame. It had entered a long pause, preserved under cold. For those living below, the sun slowly became an event rather than a condition. A surface team might announce that the sky was clear, and a small group would ask to go up and see it. They would climb through sealed passages, pass through thick doors, check gloves, masks, radios, and temperature warnings, and step into the old world for minutes. There, above a city of ice, they would find the star that had made every ocean shimmer and every forest leaf open. It would still shine, but indifferent and far away. This is where the thought experiment becomes stranger than disaster. Earth would remain Earth in its mass, its mountains, its continents, its memories written in rock. The Himalayas would still stand. The Pacific Basin would still hold its enormous depths. Old rivers would lie under ice or move only where heat allowed. The moon, still bound to Earth unless the original disturbance had altered that relationship in some extraordinary way, could continue its orbit, crossing a darker sky with familiar silence. Yet familiarity would become unsettling. The planet would look like home, but behave more like an alien world. As solar energy continued to decline, the atmosphere itself would become part of the danger. On a much colder Earth, the air near the surface would chill, thicken in some ways, and interact with snow, ice, and changing pressure patterns in complex ways. If Earth traveled far enough from the sun for long enough, some atmospheric gases could begin to condense under extreme conditions. The exact timing would depend on distance, composition,
Atmospheric circulation, clouds, ice, ocean heat, geothermal heat, and human activity. It is wise to speak cautiously here, because a whole planet is never a simple container. Still, the direction of the risk is clear. The air that once seemed free and permanent would become something habitats had to protect. Surface travel would require not only insulation against cold, but attention to pressure,
oxygen, carbon dioxide, and equipment reliability. People would no longer step outside to breathe. They would step outside carrying an environment with them, wrapped around their bodies in layers of engineering. A suit would be a small room shaped like a person. A vehicle would be a traveling shelter. A door opening to the surface would be treated with the seriousness once reserved for space. The oceans, beneath growing lids of ice, would hold out in hidden ways. Water is stubborn. It resists freezing all at once, especially in deep basins where salts, pressure, and stored heat complicate the story. Over time, vast ice sheets could seal the upper ocean away from the sky, while liquid water might remain below, insulated by ice and warmed slightly by Earth's internal heat from beneath. This would not preserve the old marine world as it was. Sunlit ecosystems would collapse where photosynthesis failed, but darkness has never meant total lifelessness on Earth. Life has deep strategies. On our real planet, communities exist near hydrothermal vents, cold seeps, and other chemically rich environments where sunlight is not the first source of energy. They are not replacements for the entire biosphere, and they could not simply carry the old ocean on their backs, but they remind us that life is more flexible than sunlight alone. Microbes can use chemical energy. Food webs can form around hidden warmth. In the Wandering Earth scenario, the deep ocean might become one of the last wild refuges, not for whales, coral reefs, or open sea abundance, but for quieter forms of endurance. Humans would study these hidden places with both scientific and urgency. The deep ocean would be difficult to reach from an ice-covered surface, yet it could teach something essential. It would show that survival does not always look like the past. It can shrink, simplify, retreat, and become strange. A microbial mat near a warm vent, glowing only under a research lamp, might become one of the most important living images left to humanity. Not because it resembled the lost forests, but because it proved that life could still negotiate with darkness when given chemistry, water, and time. The same lesson would shape human settlement. The new map of civilization would not be a map of continents, capitals, or trade routes. It would be a map of heat, geothermal zones, nuclear sites still maintained, deep habitats with stable insulation, protected farms, subglacial water access, mines converted into towns, tunnels linking warm chambers, reservoirs that could be kept liquid, industrial systems able to recycle air, nutrients, metals, and water. On such a map, a famous coastal city frozen at the surface might matter less than an anonymous underground complex built beside reliable warmth in rock. Living around heat would feel primitive and futuristic at the same time. Ancient, because the logic is older than language. Stay near the fire, protect the children, share food, guard the entrance, listen for danger outside. Futuristic, because the fire might be a reactor core, a geothermal exchange system, a bank of batteries, a fusion experiment, or a managed thermal network beneath kilometers of stone. The human circle around the campfire would remain, but the flames would be hidden behind meters of concrete, coolant pipes, turbines, sensors, and procedures. Daily life in these settlements would become a form of choreography. Morning would begin when lights gradually warmed from dim amber to pale white. Speakers might play soft tones or old recordings of birds, not to pretend the surface was unchanged, but to help bodies wake. People would rise in rooms where walls curved slightly to save heat, where condensation was watched, where every vent had purpose. The air would carry the faint smell of metal, soil trays, water, human closeness, and cooked grains. Breakfast might be measured, warm, simple, and deeply appreciated, because nothing inside it was effortless anymore. Work would be everywhere. Some people would tend crops under lamps, checking leaf color, nutrient flow,
humidity, mold, and others would inspect seals, maintain pumps, teach children, monitor health, repair insulation, process waste, recycle water, archive records, or serve meals. Survival would be less dramatic than stories often imagine. It would be maintenance, repeated faithfully. A civilization in darkness would depend on people who tightened bolts, cleaned filters, calibrated sensors, replaced worn cables, and noticed small changes before they became emergencies. The heroic act would often be doing the necessary thing again. Children born there would know the surface as a place described by rules before memories. It is cold. You cannot go alone. You need a suit. You need permission. The sky is real, but dangerous. Their drawings might show rooms first, tunnels second, and the sun as a small symbol placed in the corner because adults insisted it mattered. They would learn about rain as falling water from clouds, not from experience. They would learn about forests as tall plant communities under open atmosphere, not as places where one can walk unsealed. Their imagination would be vast, but inward. For the adults who remembered the open earth, that inwardness would ache. They might describe wind and realize language had become insufficient. How do you explain wind to a child who has only known ventilation? Wind is air that belongs to no machine. It moves through trees. It presses clothes against skin. It brings smells from far away. It can be soft, violent, warm, dusty, salty, or full of rain. A child might listen and understand the facts, yet still miss the feeling. Some inheritances cannot be transferred fully. They have to be lived through the body once. Animals would survive only where humans made room for them, or where hidden ecosystems needed no human help. Dogs and cats might remain in settlements because people would fight emotionally to keep them, and because companionship has survival value of its own. But large domestic herds would be difficult unless food production allowed it. Zoos, conservation centers, and genetic banks would face heartbreaking choices. Which species can be housed, fed, bred, and protected under severe energy limits? Which seeds, embryos, cell cultures, or DNA samples can be preserved for the future? Conservation would become triage. The wider biosphere would suffer enormously. Most surface plants depend directly on sunlight. Without enough light and warmth, forests would die back, grasslands would vanish under ice, wetlands would freeze, and countless animal species would lose habitat and food. Some microbes, spores, seeds, and hardy organisms might persist in dormant states for a time, especially where sheltered by soil, ice, or geothermal warmth. But the living richness humans knew would not simply move underground with us. The loss would be planetary, and it would carry a moral weight that no habitat could fully shut outside its doors. This weight would change how people spoke of responsibility. Before Earth wandered, humans had already understood that life was interconnected, though they often acted slowly on that knowledge. In the darkening world, interconnection would become immediate and painful. A crop failure affected nutrition. Nutrition affected health. Health affected labor. Labor affected repairs. Repairs affected power. Power affected crops. Nothing was distant anymore. The old idea that nature was outside civilization would collapse. Nature had always been inside every breath, meal,
temperature, and heartbeat. The wandering Earth would reveal that truth by removing the sunlight that had hidden the connections. Memory would become another kind of habitat. Every settlement would keep archives not only for data, but for orientation. There would be libraries of seeds, genetic material, maps, weather records, medical manuals, engineering diagrams, art, music, oral histories, films, and personal testimonies. A child could sit in a learning room and watch footage of waves breaking under a summer sun, bees moving through lavender, snow melting into streams, or people walking through a market without coats. These recordings would be beautiful, but also dangerous in their tenderness. They could comfort, or they could open grief too wide. Perhaps the most precious archives would not be the grand ones, but the ordinary ones. A recording of a kitchen window open in June, a dog barking in a garden, rain on a roof, footsteps on dry leaves, a crowd at a station in warm weather,
a thunderstorm rolling over fields, a person laughing outside without fear of exposure. These sounds would carry more than nostalgia. They would teach the inward generations what unsealed life once felt like. In a world of engineered air, the old, uncontrolled atmosphere would become almost mythical, a great invisible ocean people used to breathe freely. There would be debates about whether to show children too much of the old world. Some adults might fear it would make them restless, resentful, or sad. Others would insist that identity requires memory, even painful memory. A species that forgets forests may survive physically, but it loses part of the story that made it human. The balance would be delicate. Children need hope more than museums of loss. Yet, hope without memory can become thin. So teachers might show the old world slowly, not as accusation, but as inheritance. This is where we came from. This is what light made. As years passed, the idea of returning Earth to its former orbit would remain both dream and problem. Physics does not forbid changing an object's trajectory, but a planet is not a satellite. Its mass is immense beyond intuition. Any attempt to alter Earth's path would require energies and engineering far beyond present humanity, especially under survival conditions. Concepts could be explored theoretically: gravitational assists using massive bodies, controlled momentum exchange, gigantic propulsion systems, or long-term orbital engineering. But such ideas belong to scales of time, energy, coordination, and capability that would make early survival efforts look small. For the first generations, the honest path would be endurance. Keep habitats alive, preserve knowledge, maintain genetic diversity where possible, protect children, improve food systems, reduce energy waste, expand reliable heat, study the changing planet, build institutions that can survive pressure without becoming cruel. This work would not satisfy the heroic imagination that wants a single lever to pull. But most real survival is not cinematic. It is patient. It is cumulative. It is the difference between a pump repaired today and a settlement alive next year. It is civilization becoming humble enough to value continuity above spectacle. Over longer timescales, if humanity endured, its ambitions might grow again. Deep settlements could become more stable. Energy systems could diversify. Manufacturing might adapt to closed environments. Science could continue. Perhaps future humans would build larger orbital observatories, send probes into the dark, or attempt engineering projects unimaginable to their ancestors in the first shelters. They might not bring Earth back. They might instead learn to live as passengers on a rogue planet, a world no longer bound to a star in the usual way, but still carrying internal heat, oceans under ice, memory, technology, and stubborn living minds. A rogue Earth would be one of the strangest homes imaginable. From space, it might appear dark, icy, and quiet, with only faint artificial signatures betraying the presence of intelligence beneath the frozen shell. No blue marble glowing in sunlight, no swirling white clouds over open oceans in the old sense. No dayside bright with reflected starfire. Instead, a wandering sphere moving through interstellar darkness, accompanied perhaps by its moon, carrying hidden pockets of warmth like embers inside stone. The human species, once a creature of open plains and daylight, would become an interior phenomenon on its own planet. This image is frightening because it removes assumptions so basic we rarely notice them. We assume morning. We assume weather. We assume that outside is a place, not a hazard. We assume food begins somewhere under the sky. We assume the sun will return even after the longest night. The wandering Earth breaks these assumptions one by one, yet it also reveals how much of life is relationship. Earth is not habitable in isolation because it is made of rock and water. It is habitable because it has existed in a balance with its star, atmosphere, geology, oceans, and life. The real Earth remains in that balance for us now. It spins, it orbits, it receives sunlight, it carries seasons, storms, migrations, currents, forests, deserts, plankton blooms, and the small daily dramas of human lives. This scenario is not a prediction, it is a lens. By imagining the loss of the sun's nearness, we understand the quiet generosity of its presence. By picturing cities freezing under a distant star, we understand the miracle hidden inside a warm afternoon. By following humanity underground, we recognize that civilization is not separate from nature, but suspended within it, warmed by it. Cosmic indifference is not cruelty. The universe does not hate the worlds that freeze, nor love the worlds that bloom. Stars burn because physics permits them to burn. Planets orbit because gravity shapes their motion. Life appears where conditions allow, and struggles where conditions change. This can feel lonely, but it can also be clarifying. Meaning is not handed down by the void. It is made in warm rooms, in shared bread, in knowledge preserved, in children taught, in repairs completed, in tenderness offered, when the larger universe has no opinion at all about whether we endure. On a wandering Earth, that meaning would become concentrated. A single lamp over a table would matter. A tray of seedlings would matter. A person staying awake to monitor oxygen while others slept would matter. A story told to calm a frightened child would matter. A record saved from the old world would matter. The scale of the cosmos would be enormous, but the scale of care would remain human. Perhaps that is why the thought is so powerful. It places our smallness beside our responsibility, and neither cancels the other. We are tiny, and still, we keep watch. The fear of forgetting the sun would become one of the deepest cultural fears, not just forgetting its brightness, but forgetting how it organized feeling, how mornings opened, how evenings softened, how seasons gave time a shape, how shadows moved across floors, how fruit ripened, how skin warmed on a walk, how people once complained about heat
without understanding its sacredness. The last elders who remembered full sunlight would become living archives. Their memories would be listened to with tenderness, skepticism, envy, and awe. They would describe blue skies until language itself seemed too pale to carry the color. When those elders were gone, the sun would pass fully into inherited memory. There would be measurements, of course, images, spectral data, historical records, climate archives, agricultural manuals, paintings, poems, but the lived sun, the sun on the face, the sun through leaves, the sun turning dust in a room into golden air, would belong to the dead. Future generations might still revere it, but their reverence would be different, less like missing a parent, perhaps, and more like honoring an ancestor whose gifts made existence possible before vanishing into distance and story beyond all direct touch. Societies that lasted would have to make peace with this transformation. A culture built only on mourning might become too heavy to carry. A culture that denied loss might become rootless. The healthiest communities would likely hold both truths. The old earth was real and precious, and the new earth is the only home available. They would teach children to grieve without drowning, to adapt without contempt for the past, to honor sunlight while living by lamps. Their festivals might mark not only survival, but continuity, another year of air, another harvest under glass, another child learning the names of birds. What would birds become to those children? Not daily companions, perhaps, but creatures of the archive, like pterosaurs or mammoths once were to us, real, studied, loved through bones, images, recordings, and scientific reconstruction. A sparrow might become as wondrous as a dinosaur, not because it was rare in our time, but because its ordinary abundance had belonged to a lost atmosphere. The same might be true of butterflies, bees, forests, coral reefs, and whales. Familiar life, removed by planetary cold, would become part of deep history, while humans still continued nearby, remembering and failing to remember together. There is a strange reversal in that. Today, we look back at ancient extinctions and vanished worlds with curiosity. We imagine trilobite seas, carboniferous forests, Cretaceous skies, Ice Age plains. On the wandering Earth, future humans might look back at our present in the same way. They would reconstruct grocery stores, summer festivals, open-air sports, gardens, traffic, farms, beaches, and rainstorms. They might ask how it felt to live beneath such a generous sky and not think about it constantly. They might understand us intellectually and still find our lives almost unbelievable in
their exposed abundance. The planet itself would continue its slow journey. Space between stars is vast beyond emotional scale. Even moving at high speed, a world could wander for immense periods without approaching another star closely enough to restore anything like the old sun. Interstellar space is not empty, but it is sparse, cold, and dark. Dust, cosmic rays, distant starlight, and the faint background of the universe would surround Earth. The Milky Way would arch overhead with extraordinary clarity whenever surface conditions allowed observation. The night sky, no longer competing with a bright sun, might become one of the few expanded beauties left. Surface astronomers, if settlements supported them, would look outward from a world that had itself become a kind of spacecraft. Their telescopes would see the solar system receding into history. The sun, once the unquestioned center of life, would become one bright star among many behind them. Planets that had once been neighbors would be distant points following their own ancient paths.
Earth's old address would remain calculable, but emotionally unreachable. The astronomers would not only study the universe, they would study separation, measuring with instruments what every child learned as myth, that home can move away from home. The moon would carry its own emotional role if it remained bound to Earth. It would still rise and set, still mark cycles, still pull tides where liquid oceans survived under ice, though the visible relationship would change in a darker sky. Without strong sunlight, moonlight, as known before, would weaken too, since the moon shines by reflected sunlight. Its familiar glow would fade as the sun receded. This would make nights feel even less like old nights. The moon might become a pale companion, present but dim, a reminder that even reflected light depends on the star left behind. The word night would evolve. On old Earth, night was temporary. It was the interval before dawn, the cool half of daily rhythm, the time of sleep, stars, dreams, and returning light. On the wandering Earth, night would become geography, climate, history, and condition. The planet would not stop rotating, but rotation would no longer deliver morning in the same life-giving sense. People might still say morning because clocks required it, but morning would be a social decision, not a sunrise. This is one of the quietest losses imaginable, when a word survives, but the world behind it changes. And yet, there would be peace in some of the settlements. Not perfect peace, not utopia, but the peace of systems working, children sleeping, lamps dimming, and people trusting that the night shift is awake. In a deep habitat, after years of adaptation, one might hear water moving through pipes, the low breath of air circulation, distant footsteps, a soft announcement, perhaps music from a room where someone teaches an old melody. A tray of young plants might glow under violet-white lamps. A cat might sleep near warm machinery. Human life would continue in smaller, warmer circles. The surface above could be almost unimaginable to them. Imagine climbing after many years through maintenance shafts to a sealed observation dome. Beyond the glass lies the city of the ancestors, buried in blue darkness. Towers stand like cliffs. Streets are smooth with ice. Snow has erased lane markings, gardens, steps, and curbs. The sky is black even at the hour called day. A bright star hangs where the sun should be, still powerful in memory, but too distant to soften the air. Below your boots, beneath floors and rock, the living city hums quietly, hidden from the frozen world it inherited. This contrast would define the species. Above, the museum of an open planet. Below, the workshop of survival. Above, the silence of abandoned weather. Below, the murmur of controlled air. Above, a world shaped by sunlight and now deprived of it. Below, a world shaped by human hands trying to imitate what sunlight once gave freely. Neither realm would be false. The surface would remain Earth, majestic and wounded. The depths would also be Earth, intimate and unfinished. Together, they would form a planet divided between memory and continuation, between the old gift and the new discipline. If humanity survived long enough, perhaps the fear would soften into identity. People might stop thinking of themselves as refugees from the surface and begin thinking of themselves as keepers of the inner earth. There,
Architecture would become graceful instead of purely emergency built. Their gardens under lamps might become beautiful in their own right. Their songs might no longer only mourn the sun, but celebrate warmth made together. Children might grow into adults who do not feel imprisoned by tunnels. because tunnels are where families live, stories begin, and communities gather. Adaptation can become belonging. Still, the old longing would not vanish completely. It would appear in art. A painter would imagine a horizon never seen. A musician would compose a sunrise from descriptions. A scientist would grow a tree in a chamber tall enough to hold it, and people would visit quietly, looking up through leaves at lamps arranged to mimic a sky. The tree would not be a forest, but it would be a promise of form. Roots below, branches above, life reaching toward light even when the light was manufactured. In that gesture, old Earth and new Earth would meet softly. The scientific meaning of the whole scenario returns here, at the edge between terror and tenderness. Habitability is not a fixed label attached to a planet forever. It is a relationship maintained through energy, chemistry, distance, atmosphere, geology, and time. Move one part far enough, and everything reorganizes. Earth is not alive because it possesses a single magic ingredient. It is alive because conditions overlap in rare and generous ways. The sun is not just a bright object in the sky. It is the main river of energy flowing through almost every meal, breath, tree, season, and human memory. To imagine Earth leaving the solar system is therefore to imagine the removal of an invisible foundation. It asks what remains when the foundation is weakened. Some things collapse quickly, others adapt. Some forms of life endure in hidden places. Human intelligence becomes both burden and tool because it can foresee suffering, but also prepare shelter. Technology becomes a second nature, not replacing the first, but attempting to carry fragments of it forward. Community becomes infrastructure. Memory becomes warmth. Knowledge becomes a way of keeping the dark from becoming meaningless, while the planet moves beyond the reach of dawn. The universe contains worlds without suns close enough to warm them. It may contain rogue planets drifting between stars, some perhaps with internal heat, thick ice, hidden oceans, or chemistry unknown to us. They are not failures. They are worlds following their own histories, but for Earth and for the creatures made by Earth's long partnership with the sun, such wandering would be exile. The oceans, forests, soils, animals, and civilizations we know were shaped under steady light. Remove that light, and Earth does not stop being a planet. It stops being the Earth our bodies expect. That is why the imagined journey is so haunting. It is not only that people might freeze, or cities might fall silent, or crops might fail. It is that the familiar would become unfamiliar while still wearing the face of home. A street remains a street, but no one walks it. A beach remains a beach, but the sea is locked beneath ice. A farmhouse remains on the hill, but no season comes to wake the field. The sky remains enormous, but the warm center is gone. Loss becomes more powerful because so many shapes remain recognizable beneath the frost. The final human lesson may be gratitude without ownership. We do not own the sun. We do not command Earth's orbit. We do not negotiate with gravity. Our safety is partly built from things we can influence, and partly from cosmic conditions we inherited without deserving them. This need not make life feel meaningless. It can make ordinary life feel more luminous. A warm room, a shared meal, a morning window, a cloud lit from behind, the taste of fruit, the sound of rain, the easy act of stepping outside. All of these are planetary gifts disguised as routine.
On the wandering Earth, people would preserve such gifts as stories. They would tell children that once, long ago, the sky brightened by itself, that rivers ran under open air, that fields grew from sunlight falling over soil, that people could stand outside for hours and forget the universe was dangerous. The children might listen from bunks carved into warm stone, eyes heavy, while ventilation hummed and lamps dimmed. To them, the story might sound impossible and comforting at once, like a dream from before the world learned caution. Perhaps that is how all lost worlds
survive at first. Eventually, the narration of that civilization would become quieter, not because the struggle ended, but because life, if it continues, always seeks a rhythm. The first panic would be history. The first shelters would be museums or foundations beneath newer halls. The first generation of darkness would become ancestors. The deep cities would have names, traditions, repairs, arguments, lullabies, festivals, gardens, and graves. Above them, the frozen surface would keep its patient silence. Beyond that, the starfields would turn with Earth's rotation, and the distant sun would remain one point among countless others, bright in records, smaller in the sky. There is comfort, strangely, in imagining even this. Not comfort in the loss, but comfort in the persistence of care. Wherever humans can remain human, they make corners of meaning. They smooth blankets over sleeping children. They label seed trays. They teach words for animals gone from daily life. They watch machines, not because machines are sacred, but because the people breathing through them are. They save songs. They measure the cold. They remember the light. Against a universe too large to notice them, they notice one another, and that noticing becomes a small, steady fire held in common. Now the wandering planet moves on in the mind's eye. The surface is still. The oceans are sealed under ice. Mountains rise into a darkness so clear that the stars seem almost near. Cities sleep beneath frost, their towers blue and silent, their roads softened by snow no wheel will disturb. Far below, behind doors and stone and careful engineering, small lights remain. They shine over tables, seedlings, instruments, sleeping faces, and pages filled with the old names of birds, rivers, seasons, and flowers. Earth is far from the sun now, but not empty, not entirely silent, and somewhere, in one of those warm chambers, a child who has never felt natural sunrise dreams of a sky they know only from stories. Perhaps the dream is not accurate. Perhaps the sun is too large, the grass too bright, the wind too gentle. But dreams are not archives. They are lanterns. They carry what facts alone cannot carry. In the dream, the child walks through a field under golden light, and no alarm sounds, and no door seals behind them. Above, the old sun shines with impossible nearness. Below, the real child sleeps safely in the dark. The planet continues, without needing to explain itself. It drifts through interstellar space, a dark sphere with a hidden pulse, accompanied by memory, machinery, ice, and life reduced, but not erased. The universe around it is vast, cold, and beautiful in the way things can be beautiful without being kind. Stars burn at impossible distances. Dust moves between them. Time opens in every direction. And Earth, once the blue world of a yellow sun, carries its small human fires onward, deeper into night,
wrapped in silence, bearing within it the quiet knowledge that warmth, wherever it survives, must be shared. For us, outside the thought experiment, morning still comes. The real sun is still there, pouring light across oceans, roofs, forests, fields, and sleeping towns. Earth still follows its ancient curve, neither perfectly safe forever nor lost tonight. The scenario fades, but what it reveals remains. We live inside a balance so constant that it feels invisible, a cosmic shelter made of distance and light. And as the imagined frozen world recedes into darkness, the ordinary world returns more gently. A room, a breath, a pale window, a planet still held in the warmth of its star. So let the image settle softly, a blue earth in memory, a dark earth in imagination, a distant sun, a hidden shelter, a lamp above green leaves, a child asleep under careful air. No alarms now, no rushing, only the slow motion of a world moving through silence, and the quieter motion of your own breathing in the room where you are. The thought drifts farther away, like a planet becoming a point of light. The night around it is immense and calm and deep, and somewhere inside that darkness, a small warmth remains, glowing gently, almost like a dream.